Hello and welcome back to Inside Update, a show brought to you by investigative newsroom InsideInvestigator.org. We're a team that works to root out corruption through investigative journalism, and this is another week where we have seen more corruption in the state of Connecticut. There have also been some kind of startling controversies. We're here to talk about Marc's newest investigation. We're going to call it an investigation. It was a feature piece. It started out as a daily story. This thing just kept growing, and all of a sudden we're saying, wow, yeah, let's give this thing some room to breathe. Marc did a really fantastic job. Spoiler alert, this is about the state backing a $2 million claim against a yoga studio after a man was asked to leave a woman's class. We are also going to talk about a lawsuit filed by an affordable housing developer against the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. So, two really important topics, interesting stuff today. Marc, happy Thursday. How's it going?
Busy as ever.
Busy as ever. I mean,
Yeah.
as much as I like to hear that, I also, please sleep, get the rest, right? You're putting out quality stuff, so
Sleep
there's
when I'm dead.
some balance that's working
Yeah.
here at least. Let's talk about this yoga studio issue first, if you don't mind. It is, well, why don't you tell it? How did this come to be?
Well, yeah, I got a tip about this yoga studio in Weathersfield called Soulshine Yoga. It's owned by this woman, Brianna Bruno, and she's got quite a problem on her hand. Um, she is facing a claim from a man who was attending her classes and causing some disruption to her, not only to her, but to her customers and her yoga instructors. Uh, now, the best way to put this is this individual. We're not, before we get into it, because I know we're going to hear about it, this has nothing to do with trans issues. This was not a trans woman or a trans man. This was just a guy who was making a lot of the women who attend this yoga studio uncomfortable. And one of the ways he was making them uncomfortable was showing up for women-specific classes. Prenatal yoga, pelvic floor yoga exercises, divine feminine breath work. Typically things that a guy like me is not going to show up for those classes. He insisted on showing up for them, and some of the comments that he was making were making the customers uncomfortable. The yoga instructors apparently had prior run-ins with this guy who has been asked to leave yoga studios apparently across the state. He is no stranger to being asked to leave yoga studios because of his behavior. He is also no stranger to filing lawsuits and claims against organizations and businesses that he feels have discriminated against him in some form or fashion. And this is where Brianna Bruno's story comes in. Uh, this individual attended a women's yoga class, Divine Feminine Breathwork, and afterwards, Brianna had decided she'd had enough. This had been going on for months. She sent him an email saying, and per my discussion with her, she was kind of trying to let him down easy, just being like, "Hey, I don't think it's right. I don't think you should continue coming to this studio." And one of the reasons that she listed was, you keep coming to women's yoga classes, like, women's specific yoga classes. And that's where she got in trouble. So this individual, Mr. Shalinsky, took the matter to the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, the CHRO. This is an arm of the state government that adjudicates discrimination claims filed by individuals against businesses, landlords, even state agencies. Their job is to look at the situation, determine if discrimination took place, and then if they determine that discrimination took place, they try to mediate a settlement between the two parties, or it goes to what's called a public hearing, mostly a trial, whereupon the CHRO will present their evidence that discrimination had taken place, and the public hearing officer will determine the uh, the correct punishment for whatever business this is, or whoever committed said discrimination. Because Brianna mentioned that it was a women's class, CHRO determined that Mr. Shalinsky had been discriminated against, and he is demanding $2 million. Initially, he wanted her business just shut down. CHRO explained that they don't do that. And so he wants his $2 million. I met with Brianna. She does not have $2 million. And we've seen a lot of criticism of CHRO in the past. We've even written about some of the issues that have gone on there where people come to learn that they can kind of game the system. And I just based looking at this is kind of what we see going on here.
Well, so let's roll this back really quick to take a look. I mean, she said this is her private business. I don't know if
Yeah.
she's renting or owns the building, but at some point she said, "You are an individual who I do not want here." Could you just explain for those who might not know about public accommodation and basically why can't you say, basically, as part of my freedom of association is the right to not associate either. I don't want you here. You're hurting my business. You're hurting the people who are my, employees or contractors who run these classes. Why is she not protected to peacefully say no to this guy?
Well, she can say no. Um, it's the wording. It's what she sent in the email when she asked him not to return to the yoga studio. And to her point, when I was talking to her, she's like, I don't have an HR department. I'm a one person, team here, I'm running this by myself. I don't have an HR department. The state doesn't sit there and tell you what you can and can't say to avoid getting a claim lodged against you. She's like, I was trying to kind of point out the obvious things that was going on that was making my female customers uncomfortable. And in doing so, because she said, you're going to these women's only classes and you're a man, that counted as discrimination against men. Uh, and so had she just said, she could have said all sorts. She could have been like, "You're a complete jerk, and I don't want you here anymore," and that would have been okay. Like that wouldn't have been discrimination. But because she mentioned that he's a man encroaching on women's only, or not, I can't say women's only, women's yoga classes, that got her a discrimination finding. For those people who don't know, there was a Connecticut Supreme Court ruling back in 2022 that determined uh, places like gyms, wellness centers, things like you can't have a designated place for one gender or another. So there was a lawsuit. A man filed a lawsuit against Edge Fitness, claiming that their section of the gym that was for only women violated discrimination laws, and he won. So no longer, if you've got a place that's open to the public, as she does, you can't have a section just for one gender. Now, where this gets really interesting is, it's a small studio. It's 750 feet. It's just an open room. So there's no way that she can have a different section for different genders. And that's not what she wants, and that's not what she's hoping for. Because what she's doing is having gender specific programming within an area that is open to the public. And so, in there was a bill put up, we get into it in the story. There was a bill put up that went before the Judiciary Committee on which she testified, and she does have some support from lawmakers in trying to fix this issue. But her point was, there are classes that we offer as yoga instructors that are specific to female anatomies. And she's like, I'm not asking to just have the entire, business be just for women, but she's like, I don't see where there's a problem where we can have a 1 hour class that is just for women, or individuals with female anatomies, people who are going to be going through menopause, who are going to have prenatal, issues and pelvic floor things, all this kind of stuff. And, her point was, she doesn't see why it should be controversial that you could have sex specific programming within a business that is open to everybody. I mean, she does have male customers who go to her yoga studio. She says about 20% of her customers are men, and they are accommodated. Uh, but what she is looking for is some kind of carve out in state statute that says you can have programming that is sex specific. Not, she's not looking for, sex specific places or, what have you, just, a class that she can offer during, business operations.
So yeah, I mean, and the only way currently to really get around that is like, hey, you're offering a similar class like in someone's home, and then it's invite only. So if it's women, like it would have to be, again, it comes back to this place of public accommodation. So if you have a business and you hang a shingle out front, that all of a sudden throws you on the other side of the law where you have to open your doors to anyone, right? There's a long legal history here that goes back a long ways in terms of the problems that it's ostensibly trying to fix. Is this just an unintended consequence as you understand it, that these kind of situations are bound to come up, or is this kind of, yeah, no, the law is exactly intended to fix this situation, and the our I guess lawmakers or CHR enforcers saying, yeah, Bruno, like we got you dead to rights because you are doing something wrong here. I guess could you clear up that a little bit? And I'm not
Um,
asking you to prognosticate. I recognize that's kind of a loaded question, but I think it's an important one.
yeah,
Truly,
well,
it's
no,
the
it's
heart of the issue.
you're yeah, you kind of have to split hairs here. When it comes, and I think one of the issues here is that CHRO took the wording of one sentence in one email and used that to establish their finding of guilt instead of taking in the whole, the whole thing here, and looking at it and offering giving a business owner kind of the benefit of the doubt against an individual who has been through the CHRO process before and has filed these kind of claims before. Um, and with it's interesting because Massachusetts, our neighbor to the north, they had a similar issue. A man took a fitness club to court. It was a women's only fitness club and said that's discriminatory, and the court found in his favor. What Massachusetts did is they went back and changed the law. They said, okay, you can offer sex specific gyms and fitness centers and things like that, and they later updated it to include, trans individuals. If you identify as a woman, then you can go to the women's club. But they kind of got like some of these broad strokes out of the way, saying, all right, yeah, you can do this. They didn't feel that that lawsuit was really, giving everybody a fair shake. With what Brianna Bruno was asking of the Judiciary Committee was not to, go against the Edge Fitness finding. She's not asking for sex-specific clubs. She's just saying that, like, hey, I should be able to offer classes that are specific to female anatomies. That she, to her, she's like, that shouldn't be controversial. We're welcoming to everybody, but especially when you have an individual coming in and making people uncomfortable uh, in their absolute insistence on going to these classes, and then when they're asked to leave the classes, filing suit. It's I think what you're running into here is like how much damage are we willing to do to small business owners in the name of trying to flush out discrimination, either real or perceived.
Well, there are also, I mean, these other things, and I'll read directly from the article because I thought that this was an interesting point too, is that Bruno said during testimony and in an interview that yoga classes are offered to help attendees deal with traumas. So if you're dealing, there's this whole other layer of you're going to lock people out of accessing the services they need if they can't do it in a way that's going to make them feel safe. And if there's no way to offer a class in a way that's going to help those, isn't that just a government official picking winners and losers at some point where you end up in this whole situation where, I mean, and maybe you could talk about this as well, the CHRO, who are they representing in this? And if you want to talk about that a little bit, but it is someone gets left out here, and who's making that decision? It's clearly not based on consent. It's clearly not based on, what the private business owner wants. There's someone sticking their nose in here who frankly wasn't invited.
Yes. As far as the CHRO, so they represent the state. They don't represent Mr. Shalinsky. He's going to have to represent himself or have a lawyer, but they essentially bring the weight of the state behind his claims. And what I've been like, I've written about the CHRO and businesses and landlords' complaints about them for years. Essentially, what it this is not their intent, but it is the effect. Somebody goes and files if you don't get to, you don't get the apartment that you want, or you're a man who's asked to leave a women's yoga class or what have you. This individual brings their complaint to CHRO, who uses taxpayer dollars to investigate and make their determination as to whether or not discrimination has taken place, and then uses taxpayer dollars to essentially mediate with the two parties. Now, that mediation generally takes the form of how much money are you willing to pay to make this go away? When businesses actually look at, all right, I have to go through this whole, like, I mean, this process can take a year or two. So in Miss Bruno's case, this whole thing took place in 2024. She's not getting to the trial phase, the public hearing, until January of 2027. So that's a long time. And she has to deal with all the filing. She has to deal with the mailings and, responding to, from what I understand, numerous filings made by Mr. Shalinsky. If you're a business and you have an attorney doing this, it's going to cost you some money. And so, in the end, a lot of businesses and landlords will just pay money to make the claim go away. And, our own reporter, Brandon, has done some work on this in the past, found one individual who had landed, I think, 9 discrimination settlements over the course of a few years. And here's the real kicker. It's like if you don't pay to make it go away in the settlement phase, and you go all the way to public hearing, who knows what you're going to get hit with? In Brandon's article, one landlord finally decided to tell this individual, no, I'm not going to settle with you, went all the way to a public hearing, and instead of paying $10,000 to settle it and make this person go away like the other landlords had, this landlord gets hit with a $65,000, ruling against him. So you can fight it, but you're going to go to this hearing with the state of Connecticut's arm through the CHRO saying you discriminated against this individual. And the hearing officer is going to determine what is the correct settlement. And that settlement can include emotional damages, what have you. So it can get up there. So in the end, a lot of people just pay the money to make them go away. And this creates a incentive structure for,
Well, listen, I don't know how
individuals.
many episodes I can mention Catherine's plea bargaining investigation in,
Oh yeah,
but it's the
it's the
exact
same thing.
same problem. There's an incentive on both sides of the equation, right? In plea
Mhm.
bargaining, prosecutors have an argument to clear cases faster. Those who don't, for exactly the same reason, you end up in front of a judge who is seeing these repeatedly. The punishments just keep getting higher. And the bar, it gets harder and harder to do that. And I think I want to read just a few of the headlines that we've put out here because I think that this is important for the context of CHRO. One article, CHRO deleting unread complaint emails. CHRO doesn't track lost evidence. CHRO is faulted by FOIC for deletion of cell phone messages. CHRO lost claimant's paperwork, then dismissed her case. I mean, we're not talking about a system that is working, for lack of a better phrase. I mean, listen, our job here is to root out corruption. And one of the things that we do is bring things to the public for scrutiny. Like, I don't think that our job here is to say, hey, the yoga studio or this guy is right. but we do need to understand and clearly explain the underlying structures that are contributing to what is happening. And you did a fantastic job here uh, doing that. And I really encourage people to go read it. We've had no shortage of comments about it, and some of them have
No
actually been
shortage of readers either.
certainly, yes. It's been a wonderful traffic driver for us, which is good in and of itself, at least for our business model. Um, but I also have been impressed with the number of people who have spent a significant amount of time on the page and then have written comments that, frankly, are well thought out. I did expect a lot of trash comments, a lot of just kind of yelling into the void here. And instead, what we got is okay, people are doing their own balancing tests in real time, and
Mhm.
that feels very good from the point of view of an organization that strives to inspire critical thinking on thorny issues.
Yeah, and I think, one thing, so what went before the Judiciary Committee is this, a it was a poorly drafted change to the law that ended up getting stripped out. But essentially it would have overturned like the Edge fitness finding. That's not what she wanted. But I think there was a missed opportunity here as far as addressing CHRO and how they handle claims. Particularly when you see the same people coming back time and time again to this organization saying, I've been discriminated against, I've been discriminated against, and getting these payouts. If you can't look at that and see a pattern and maybe start thinking to yourself that, like, hey, this might be a bad actor taking advantage of a system that incentivizes this kind of behavior, uh, like I think there needs to be a reckoning there. And you're the Connecticut, the state of Connecticut, the governor, they oh, we love small businesses, we're open for business, blah blah blah. But then small businesses get hit with these kind of things, and they get the full weight of the state telling them that they have discriminated or somehow wronged an individual, and they don't have, CHRO doesn't have the evidence, it doesn't have to come up with the same evidence as a court does. When you get to the hearing officer, yes, but in their initial finding that puts a business owner into this Kafka-esque bureaucracy. No, it does. It's like, oh, this is our finding, and this is what we think happened, and now you're on the hook. It's and if you're not taking into account that there are bad actors out there who do take advantage of things like this, if you're not going to look at the bigger picture, then are you really doing your job?
Yeah. You're not going to get any arguments from me. I think you're bringing up some really, frankly, well thought out points here. And again, thank you for taking the time to go through this. And again, we just put up a video of someone talking about your approach to journalism from the Avon fire case back in the day. I don't know if you've even seen
Oh
this.
yeah.
We put it out on socials, but Mr. Farrell did a great video just talking about how you showed up, you took the time to measure the distances and actually connect with the people involved. And this is just another example of that. Guys, if you are out there and you see something in your community that is corrupt, that is broken, that is not working, Marc's a great dude. Send him tips. Send us tips. We have a wonderful team of folks who want to look into this stuff. I know we kind of joke that sometimes summers get slow. And man, if there is one thing, we're in a very busy season right now, but you get tips in front of us and we can vet them and screen them. Listen, our reporting team is going to be shot from guns and thrilled to have quality leads coming in as we get into slower seasons here. Marc, I don't want to lose. I know we could talk in these last couple minutes still about the yoga studio, but can you just fill us in over a few minutes here? The other article that we wanted to talk about is headlined Affordable Housing Developer Files a Lawsuit Against the CT Housing Finance Authority. This is a follow-up on an investigation that you did a while ago. Bring us up to speed about this newest development.
Sure. So the investigation I wrote a little while back was called Target Investment. It involved some claims made by this same affordable housing developer that essentially claimed the commissioner of the Department of Housing was awarding extra funding to her former employer, which is a nonprofit housing organization. And we went through and we looked at these term sheets, and yeah, there she was this organization was getting you know multiple amendments to their term sheets, getting, millions more for their projects, and including projects that the commissioner had started when she was head of this agency. So she's essentially like paying, awarding more money to a project she began. And there were some other discrepancies, whereas, this particular affordable housing developer was not he was not allowed to get funding for one of his projects because he was facing a lawsuit for, it was a funding lawsuit. But the housing commissioner awarded funding to her ex-employer who was facing an identical lawsuit. So there is some hypocrisy there. So the affordable housing director, a gentleman named Dr. Harold Foley, he had petitioned the Connecticut Claims Commissioner to sue the Department of Housing. In Connecticut, you can't just file a lawsuit against a state agency. You have to get permission to do it. So he had filed that. But instead of waiting for the Claims Commissioner's decision, which I think was sent to me the other day, and the Claims Commissioner had shot him down anyway, he went and filed a lawsuit against the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, which works in tandem with the Department of Housing to finance these affordable housing developments. He's had multiple developments financed through CHFA. Because CHFA is a quasi-public entity, you don't have to go through the claims commissioner. You can just file in court. So he has filed. He's making pretty much the same claims that he made against the Department of Housing. And, since the Department of Housing commissioner is the board chair of the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, there's a lot of overlap there. These two agencies work in tandem to get, housing, affordable housing, particularly financed in Connecticut. So this allows the lawsuit to move forward, and things like discovery and all that kind of stuff, and just gets it going rather than waiting for the claims commissioner. So it's we'll see what happens. It's there. We are looking into a few more things when it comes to the Department of Housing and its relationship with some of these nonprofit entities, where there's definitely existent relationships there. And definitely money was going to particular projects as opposed to others. There was a lot of controversy over some of the language that was included in for developers, saying like, hey, the maximum that you can get is $4 million. Now, it said that on the website, the maximum you can get is $4 million, but these other nonprofits were getting more than that, and DOH was like, well, it's not really a maximum, it's kind of up to us, and giving themselves some fairly broad leeway to just kind of throw money around.
Thank you for, again, giving me an opportunity to point back to an existing investigation from 2022 about the Claims Commissioner and how that whole process works. That one is titled, Want to Sue the State? Get in line. That was a great headline. Credit to you back in the day. That was June 2022. So that was like something that you were working on probably before we even launched, just to get that ball rolling. That was a good
and to be fair to the claims commissioner, they've done we wrote that in 2022 when they were facing this really huge backlog, and they've done a very good job of whittling down that backlog so that they can make determinations much more quickly, which is good for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Marc, huge thank you for both of these. Very interested, I think, from everyone in Connecticut to see more to come on what the heck is going on with the DOH. We will look forward to that stuff. Should be a lot of links in the show notes for everyone to check out. We've referenced a lot of articles. Huge thank you for tuning in, watching, listening, subscribing, and especially to those who donate. We're a nonprofit, and one of the things that sets us apart, unlike many of the nonprofits who have come under scrutiny in the state of Connecticut, we accept no government money. We accept no money with editorial strings attached. We accept no money that we can trace back to anything that was obtained fraudulently. It's really
straightforward. We would like to accept some money.
We love accepting money, Marc. I think, yes, that should be made very clear. We accept money from people who believe in our mission and who want to give voluntarily to support excellent journalism. If you're one of those folks who believes in the vital work that Marc is doing and the Inside Investigator team is doing, join us. Head over to insideinvestigator.org, hit that donate button up in the top right, and buy Marc a Diet Coke. Help move the engine along here that brings these amazing works into reality. Thank you again. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And until then, folks, please don't be corrupt.